Welcome to Inside College Admission, conversations with admission leaders about matters affecting the college-going process. My name is Peter Van Buskirk, and I'm joined today by Kathy Davenport, who is the Vice President for Enrollment Management and Dean of Admission at Dickinson College. Welcome, Kathy.
Thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Good to be with you. And until I saw it here, I didn't realize your title was quite so long. You've got almost you could probably play a lot of Scrabble with those words, or those letters.
Well, and normally I give my full name, which is Catherine McDonald Davenport, and that's how I do sign my acceptance letters. And let me tell you, after signing all the acceptance letters for regular decision, I was hopeful that my name could have been something shorter, or the artist formerly known as Prince that just had the icon. So
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and people like me always got your maiden name and your married name confused a little bit too. So now that I've got Davenport figured out, I think we should go with that.
Sounds good. I'm on it.
So I gather from our early conversation before we got on the air here that your office is your dining room, the island in your dining room now?
Actually, I have the island in the kitchen. It's a delightful
okay.
island. It seats 6. It would be nicer if it was a tropical island, but an island that seats 6. My husband has had last week the dining room table, but he now has a stand-up desk. So the dining room table is now free for all of the fly tying equipment that he's working on in his spare time. And so I have to clear the island every night so we can sit and eat.
I would imagine that this is probably the first time in all of your years of admission, and I won't ask you to count, but where you've spent April the 2nd at the island in your kitchen. Given everything that's normally going on, and it's still going on right now.
Yeah,
you feel
absolutely.
A little disconnect?
I do. And, we were fortunate. We actually got our regular decision acceptances online on March 12th. So Thursday, March 12th. Acceptance packets went in the mail on Friday, the 13th. And then on Monday, March 16th, we were in the office. But the 10 days prior to that, we were actually in full mode of how do we shift everything to work remotely? I mean, this was something we could see coming. And we could see it coming for lots of reasons. I have an international host daughter who's a Dickinson senior who is from China. And so talking with her back in January about what was happening with her family back in China. And then, as things were going full blown in Italy, we have one of our larger study abroad programs in Bologna, Italy, and bringing those folks out at that time. So we were actually, Dickinson and myself, very much involved with all of the components of this is coming and how do we prepare ourselves to, continue the work as normally as we can, and do the processes we need to do, but be recognizing that the humanity of it as well. So Monday, March 16th was our last day in the office, and we were up and running with a virtual web page on that Monday, knowing that our accepted students were not going to be able to return to campus to be able to do any of those opportunities. Our sophomores and juniors for their spring breaks that were planning to come out and visit colleges were not going to be able to do that. So we were, it was literally like running two worlds, getting ready for release, and at the same time teaching an entire staff to use Teams and Zoom and various technology related platforms in order for us to continue our work. I also commented to one of our staff members, I have never in more than 20 years been out in my yard on a Saturday in March or April after decision release, because I was always doing work. There was always an accepted student event or a program to be attending, and I was literally out gardening, which I have to say was pretty calming, pretty peaceful, pretty enjoyable.
You might want to do it again. I guess my revelation is that these days, every day is Groundhog's Day. It's just one day after another looks the same. But again, what a nice therapeutic opportunity to be out in the garden. So your campus is like a ghost town right now?
It's pretty quiet. I mean, we do have some students that are on campus, petitioned to stay. So the week that we released decisions was our spring break week, and then we extended spring break into the following week. By the week of the 23rd, we were doing remote coursework, but we still have over 100 students that are on campus right now, either because they are international students and cannot return home or for other circumstances. So we do have a very dedicated team, our Department of Public Safety, members of our dining staff, members of our housekeeping staff, members of our health and wellness staff, that are on campus every day. And while the rest of us are working remotely, I go to campus 2 times a week to get some of the essential materials that have to happen. I'm the only person on our staff that'll do that, just to minimize. And now with the governor's recent order that really all the counties in Pennsylvania are on, stay at home at this point, unless there's an emergency response meeting of some reason that we would physically have to be on campus, we're not. But it's important for us to remember that we do have students on campus. And so our Student Life Campus engagement team has done a really nice job of keeping them connected in virtual ways. They've also been doing really great stuff with our students who have gone home to continue to do their coursework remotely and keeping the community connected. So not relying on students to just stay in touch with their own little group, but keeping them informed and up to date. I know some club meetings are happening virtually. Student Senate's had some virtual meetings, trying to keep the semester, as authentic and intact as possible, not physically being in the same space.
Kind of interesting. It's like the future is redefining the present for us.
This is a total paradigm shift, a total paradigm shift. And I really believe that, and you and I have done this work for a while. We won't say how many years, but we've done this work for a while. And, I do believe that, necessity, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, or the mother of invention's necessity, however that goes. Mm-hmm. There's a mother in there somewhere.
Right.
But for me, I do believe that some of the things that we've had to be creative and collaborative and shift very quickly are probably things that we might retain, because they are like, hey, this is working. This is a good way to do this. And some of the things that we felt were always a tried and true kind of experience, we're like, maybe we don't have to do those anymore. Maybe that's not as pertinent or as relevant. We're receiving information and dispersing information in different ways.
Well, and we'll get into that a little bit more later as well. But in the here and now, since the 1st of March, let's say, when you had a very strong inkling that things were going to start changing, and you had the foresight to get your decision letters out and get your messaging out, et cetera. But from that point to the present and into the next 6 or 8 weeks, what do you see as the big challenges, pandemic related challenges, that are going to impact the way you enroll the class of 2024?
Yeah, great question, because I do think, every day I think of new things that to be concerned and worried about, new things to keep me up at night. And I would say that, there's always going to be unknowns, right? And I think the number of unknowns are just more and more prevalent. So right now, we were already thinking, because back in January, what was happening internationally, our international enrolled numbers might be lower this year, because students aren't going to be able to get visas on time. Students aren't going to be able to complete programs in order to be able to be with us this fall. So we were already being very proactive in February, thinking about, okay, well, what if we had more first-year students coming to us in January? That would give them more time to get visas in play and so forth. That's really, one of the things I think about for all students now. There are a number of students who may not be able to complete their high school senior year in May, June timeframe. Mm-hmm. They may be extended for whatever reason, and maybe they're not going to come in the fall. There may be a lot of financial components to all of this, right? As families are seeing furloughs, or seeing hours cut, or seeing, jobs no longer being available. The reality of what the financial circumstances were and the aid awards that we put out could be vastly different. And that's not just for incoming students, that's our returning student population as well.
So if I might interrupt for a second, that's a really important consideration, because people who felt like they were maybe comfortable, 2 years ago when last fall when they filled out the FAFSA using the 2018 data, income data, now 2 weeks into this coronavirus crisis are feeling like they have nothing.
Right.
There's some starkly different realities that
Mm-hmm.
families are dealing with, and I suspect there's going to be a tendency for them to kind of lay it at your doorstep.
And that's happening a little bit right now, but in some cases the information is so new and so fresh, that it just happened yesterday, it just happened a week ago, it happened 2 weeks ago. We're still understanding, having those conversations. Financial aid is, admissions is, others on our community, on our staff are, the college community are having those conversations, because the reality is the world that people knew 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, is not the world of today. And so I think we're doing what we can to help families in these moments, but sometimes the need is so great, and the money, it's not an unlimited fund, right? We all have budgets that we have to live within. We're trying to help understand what's going on and what are some good thoughts, ideas, resources for that particular family, whether it's a returning student or an enrolled early decision student whose circumstances have now changed. We're trying to listen closely, hear and understand what the reality and the circumstances are, and do what we can to try and work with that family to continue to make Dickinson affordable and attainable for all students.
But you can't print money.
But we can't print money. I think you can, but that's not legal.
No.
So I don't think I'm going to go down that road.
Well, I want to kind of step into another puddle here as it relates, because before the whole crisis evolved here, there was some real consternation about what the Department of Justice action would
Mm-hmm.
have to do with the way families made decisions and the way colleges would compete with each other. The thought being that there shouldn't really have to be a firm deadline for enrollments, and why should we limit the family's ability to see offers of admission later in the process? Now, given what's going on with both the health and the economic crisis, families might feel very much empowered to say, well, if you can't do it for us, then we're going to go down the road to the next school. We're going to shop around to get the best deal.
Mm-hmm.
You see that happening at all?
Well, not yet, or not very much at this point in time. I'm hopeful. I have great faith in humanity, and I'm hopeful that people will not use this as a gaming mechanism, so that the people who really need the resources have access to those resources. Yeah, I would say when we first, the NACAC DOJ thing, that was my item keeping me up at night. I kind of, now it's in the rearview mirror to some degree, right? Because, the new realities are so much greater and so much broader, and so much more absorbing. And so for me right now, it's, what areas of the country, just looking at the US. I mean, we're located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, right? So Pennsylvania has a wealth of colleges and universities, community colleges, 2-year schools, 4-year schools. Our neighboring states are being heavily, heavily impacted. New Jersey, New York, Southern Connecticut, areas that we draw heavily from, right? We're having a lot of people that are being impacted by the COVID-19 right now. And so, I'm hoping that the gaming of the system that may have occurred because of the NACAC DOJ, that people are kind of looking at this with a different lens. And if they're going to make a commitment to be somewhere, they're going to do what they can to make that work, rather than hopping from one place to the next place. Let me take my award from this place and ante it up against some other place and see if I can get a better deal, and then ante it up against another place. Will that happen? It will. Absolutely, it will happen. But I'm hopeful that, the students who have committed to us have done that in a very thoughtful, very focused, they see a connection to being at Dickinson, and this isn't about using Dickinson to one up someplace else.
Something else. Will you be flexible with your enrollment deadline?
We are, actually. We did, when NACAC put out the survey, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they put out a survey. We had said at that time that we would allow May 15th to be the point. I know there are a lot of schools, or some schools anyway, that have said June 1st. We feel comfortable with May 15th because we also have a lot of work to do this summer. We do a lot of online virtual work in the summer with the incoming class. And so to lose a full month is going to change some things. You know, we're working under the plan that we are going to be in person again come fall, but that is, you know, who knows, right? My crystal ball is out at the shop right now, so I can't really give that full prediction, but that's how we're working. So we're working towards being in person, but also beginning the conversations of, well, what if we're not? What if this is continuing? How will that work?
Well, and then again, we're learning things each day that seem to change our sense of what the future will be. You know, I think that um, there's a temptation to even look at the summer and wonder whether we can count on firm dates there. Now, I want to reflect with you just a little bit on how you manage this from an enrollment perspective. And over the years, you know, you and I both dealt with regular decision and early decision and early action and wait list. And all of these are factors that you use to help with accuracy in modeling the likely behavior of your class in terms of who's going to show up if admitted, and your ability to make sure that you get, you know, the exact number that you want, not 50 more, not 50 fewer. But I would imagine that a lot of the assumptions, a lot of the history that have informed those models in the past is really hard to, it's not really viable anymore, is it? So do you feel like you're kind of working in the dark a little?
You know, I mean, predictive modeling is based on past behavior, right? The historical past behavior of what occurred prior. And if you don't have consistency in what occurs prior, it's pretty hard to use that same data to predict the next circumstances, right? So yeah, I mean, I do think, you know, in some respects, I refer to this as, this is really old-fashioned admissions, right? This is a one-to-one, reach out and touch someone, but not really, stay 6 feet away, or be virtual about it. This is a, you know, handwritten note. This is a following up, you know, with a text. Now it's a text message, used to be phone calls. You still do those, right? This is a, you know, trying to help a family, you know, do you need to walk through your financial aid award with somebody to better understand what that looks like, or concerns. So predictive modeling, yeah, we still have all those components in play, right? I'm still looking at, you know, the data every day as it's coming in, but it's really hard to understand what's causing it to be, you know, what is impacting the individual decision versus the aggregate decision, right? In what they're doing. So, you know, thankfully, we had 2 very strong early decision rounds. And we eliminated our early action program this past year. We just felt like we were admitting students in early action who were not, you know, enrolling with us. The yield off early action was in decline. So we eliminated our early action program, which gave us a larger regular decision pool, but a more level playing field in that regard. And so the students that we have offered admission to, you know, we're ahead on deposits, date to date, right? What does that mean? We're not at May 1 or May 15 at this point in time. And how, you know, from my perspective, how many of that group will request to defer? And will they request to defer, as we talked about earlier? Maybe they can't get a visa. Maybe finances have changed significantly. They're now going to take a year off. You know, I think the reasons for deferrals are going to be greater this year. The requests for deferrals are going to be greater this year. And quite frankly, I'm also, you know, interpreting that we'll probably have some of our current students requesting to step out for a year while things level themselves out, whether it's because of family health issues or their own health issues or financial concerns. You know, that could be taking a gap year during college, may become a little bit more normal than students have done in the past.
So a lot of, frankly, a lot of this could break late in the summer.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Keeping a lot of folks up at night, I think. But so is it possible that this could be broadly the year of the wait list?
You know, I think it could be depending upon the school. You know, I think depending upon the college or the university and the depth of their wait list, you know, in July, August, there may be students that have terrific choices that they did not have in March, April time frame. And then, you know, again, as a parent of 3 young men, you know, sometimes when you get connected to something, right? So if you've made your decision in May, or June, end of mid-May, let's say May 15, you've made your decision. I think there's a psychological connection to that institution, right? That starts to take place. I am going to Dickinson College. And so there's a connectivity point. If you're coming off a wait list later, if you're coming off a wait list in July, August, will there be one, are you willing to give up what you already have? And two, are you maybe going to see that aid award? Maybe there'll be more money coming off a wait list late in the summer, when typically in the past there's not been that opportunity. So I think my biggest concern, honestly, is this is about the student and the family, and I want them to feel good and confident about the decisions they're making, and not feel tugged, kind of like, oh, I'm being enticed to do this at this school, or, oh, I'm being enticed to do this at this school. I think there needs to be some balance. I think there needs to be some return to normalcy. I don't know what that is. I don't know what normal is anymore. But that just, I feel like right now, students, parents, school counselors, they're on a roller coaster, right? Because as you said earlier, things keep changing. What we know today might be the same tomorrow. It might be a little different tomorrow. It could be really different tomorrow.
Right.
And I think that the uncertainty is causing a lot of anxiety, a lot of, just nervousness. And so what we're trying to do as best we can is minimize the anxiety, minimize the nervousness, minimize that feeling of I don't have any control over what's happening.
Gotcha.
Well, right now, the important part is have control, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, right? I mean, and sometimes just letting someone say that to me on the phone, it feels almost like a therapy session, right? If I'm talking to, I'm not really talking, I'm listening.
Yeah.
And sometimes the person at the other end just wants to know there's a live human being on the other end who gets it, who understands it, who's living it too. And they leave the call at least feeling like, okay, thank you.
Yep. Now, that said, the live human being piece is something that a lot of families have really looked forward to as it's been admitted. Now it's time to go see them again, walk around the campus, talk to people, meet the professors again. And you can't do that right now. So what sort of accommodations made for the admitted student who really wants to have that live person experience?
Oh my gosh. So before we were on, complete stay at home, we had some great plans in place for basically taking an individual student who wanted to on a campus tour through using, an iPhone, an iPad, whatever, and almost, FaceTiming with them or doing Zoom or whatnot. And we had this great arrangement all set up. And then, of course, that can't happen right now. So we're pretty fortunate. We have really great video. So from an informational perspective, you can learn a lot of good stuff. But what we're doing is our whole admissions counseling team, and we have 5 regionals. So I think we've been accustomed to not having everybody together in one place. We have a West Coast out in California, up near Boston, down near Charlotte, in the DC area, in Connecticut. We've been really accustomed to having that kind of work. And so we do a lot already on Zoom and Teams and some other formats where we're not sitting next to each other. We're not sitting in the admissions office having a conversation or walking around campus together during an open house, but we're as close as we can be to, hey, I'm having a live conversation with Peter Van Buskirk right now, right? I'd rather be sitting with you, having a beverage and having the conversation. That's not possible right now. So we're trying to create what is possible right now. And so again, our amazing admissions team and our tech support, we put up a virtual page right on March 16th. It has a virtual campus tour, but it also has links to some of the information sessions. So if you're a sophomore or junior and you want to do a Dickinson information session, we can do that with you. And you're actually live in the room. It's almost like being in a Zoom classroom. We're doing the same thing with admitted students. So if you want to meet some of the other admitted students, we've always had a class of 2024 Facebook page for students and one for parents and guardians. So we're putting more information into some of those venues as well. We're making it known that, hey, if you call my phone number, I'm going to get a message and I'm going to be giving you a call back, and we're going to have a phone appointment, or we're going to have a, a visual appointment of some sort. So we're trying to do what we can to create the emotional connection. And we know that a lot of our families have met many of our staff members through high school visits, college fairs, interviews, and so forth. It's reconnecting them.
Speaking of college fairs, I know that you're trying to get your admitted class to the finish line right now, but you've got a horde of juniors ready to start the race. And I remember back in the day, we would no sooner get one class enrolled than we already had the plans in place to do open houses in the summertime, planning high school visits in the fall, college fairs, college nights. And all of that's in jeopardy right now. So what do you make of that situation? How, maybe you and your team are still focused on just the seniors, but soon you'll be imagining, the next 8 to 10 month period. What will that look like, do you think?
Yeah, we're actually living in the moment, not only with the accepted students and bringing in the class of 2024, but we were expecting a number of sophomore and juniors to be on our campus end of March and through April. Being able to visit for junior open house, which was going to be at the end of April, our visit days that include a class visit and things like that. So we're still living in the two worlds the way we would normally live in the two worlds at this time of year, bringing in the class, but starting the classes of 2025 and 2026. The good news is, and we are blessed and fortunate to have an amazing faculty, other college administrators who, on a daily basis are saying, what do you need me to do? How can I help?
That's great.
Because in some respects, what you're doing right now is your day job, right? So you're teaching classes, you're engaging with students during your faculty office hours, you're having one-on-one conversations, but all those other activities that you would normally be doing, rehearsing for the orchestra performance, getting ready for the play, those things aren't happening. So faculty have been great and said, what do you need me to do? Who do you want me to connect to? How do you want me? And they're doing that with obviously our accepted students, but with our guidance, some of the other students as well that are just getting started, if appropriate, just
They're
getting
making
started.
some connections with them then. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know there are some organizations that are trying to set up some virtual fairs, so that there's access and opportunity for students, but also the college folks. Some schools are trying out doing online case studies. So all the case study programs that we would typically do in the spring of the year with juniors, parents and families held by a variety of schools. Some schools are trying to roll them out. And so we're testing to see how that might look for us as well. We're trying to make sure we have good video, good clips of information, so that people can easily find and access what they're looking for. Perfect.
Now, one of the things that I've heard a lot of juniors talking about right now with some degree of angst is testing. And not that they love testing, but they know that they've taken the PSAT, they've taken maybe a January SAT, and they know what they need to do to fix their numbers. And all of a sudden, those opportunities to fix their numbers, to improve their results, are dissipating pretty quickly. Is Dickinson considering any consideration or considering any possible accommodation again for the student who is going to be otherwise presenting maybe an incomplete testing profile?
Well, we've been test optional since 1995, so that question doesn't apply, which is awesome. I do know there are a number of colleges and universities that have put out word that they're going to not, for the class, so the class that finishes this year, the class that would enter fall of 2020 or 2021, that testing won't be a part of their review process.
Right.
They're not committing to going test optional long term, but they are saying specifically for this moment in time that they're not going to require that testing. I feel badly for the student. There's so much stress and pressure. What we're saying to them is, look, that's not, take out the standardized test piece for Dickinson, not a piece to be stressed and worried about, isn't going to influence us. And even I think we have to be adaptable and flexible with how students are going to be able to complete sophomore year of high school, junior year of high school, senior year of high school. Obviously the Department of Education is providing guidance on that. But I think this will be the asterisk semester, right? On college transcripts, on high school transcripts for a whole host of reasons. And I think, it just has to be a reminder to us of, yeah, those grades or that credit or that pass fail, however school is going to make it work, that will be part of, you know, the letter, so to speak, for the next couple of years, right? The call out on that, and you know, very appropriate to do so. Very appropriate for us to constantly be reminded that, yeah, take into consideration what was taking place, and how that student maybe couldn't complete that AP program because of resources at their school or technology issues in the rural environment in which they're from, or, you know, their school was closed longer and, you know, the health issues were greater, and we're going to have to figure out a plan for that. So we're going to be as adaptable and flexible as we possibly can be, for every student who's experiencing this very challenging time.
Well, and that doesn't surprise me. As long as I've known Dickinson, that's what I've known the ethos to be. So good for you. Um, Now, you mentioned earlier back to normal, in referencing things that we do or don't do right now. Um, as I talked with somebody earlier, I found that, or I heard that the observation that he was making a note to staff, write that down, because when we get through this, we want to come back and make sure we don't lose that new idea that we're doing. So he's making a list of things that are born out of
Mm-hmm.
the the chaos right now that may be functional later. But is there going to be a return to the way we've always done things, or no?
My opinion, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. You
Right.
know, I think, for lots of reasons. I mean, if we are able to do more things in, you know, a virtual world, right? I think, you know, so for example, if I'm not flying to do high school visits
Hmm.
to wherever, you know, the Pacific Northwest, that doesn't mean I'm not interested and focused on families, students, and counselors from the Pacific Northwest. I could just do it maybe like this.
Hmm.
One, it's saving the carbon footprint. Two, it's also a financial savings, right? And you're meeting a person where they are at that moment in time with the questions they have, the experiences they want to talk to you about. So I could envision doing, you know, a lot of online virtual interviews. I could, you know, rather than doing interviews on a Saturday in, you know, the hotel lobby, you know, at the local Marriott, right? Wherever I might end up being. Why can't I do those from my home, you know, on a Tuesday night?
Sure.
You know, not even from my office, but if I know my technology and Wi-Fi is working, why can't I just do it from my home? And the student is doing it from his or her home. So I think, you know, that was the paradigm shift, that I referred to earlier. I think there are some things we're going to look back on and reflect on and say, yep, this is a component of what we do that we definitely don't want to lose it, because it has this value. It speaks to who we are as an institution. And I think we're going to look at some other things and say, you know what, we didn't do those things, and it's okay that we didn't do those things. We, you know, we came through it just fine. So maybe those are things we don't continue to do. And they could be, you know, taking a lot of staff time and resources to make them happen, and they're not as effective because this other thing works just as well or better.
One thing I recall from admission, there was an awful lot of addition to the work we did in it, because there's the notion of we always did it that way, so we can't subtract anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's a new idea, we need to add it on and add it on, and that's one of the reasons people kind of get, you know, run out of gas before they
Yeah.
get to where they need to go in this process. I
Yeah.
mean, that would burn them out. So maybe what you're suggesting is that we exercise some good judgment in subtracting things from the work that we do then as well. Well,
Absolutely.
um, as we're kind of bringing things to a wrap here, if you were to have a conversation with a 17-year-old today, and maybe you will soon, I don't know, in your own house, I don't know, uh, but maybe I'm overthinking this for the 17-year-old, but I'm imagining a young person who's really kind of confused at the very least about things going on in the world, and also confused that this whole college thing is supposed to happen, but it's not happening the way I thought it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to that 17-year-old?
You know, I would have to say, relax. This is not the most important thing in your world right now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to really, you know, take stock. I think we have become such a society of do. You know, I like to joke back to when I was in kindergarten. We had a book that was called the Think and Do book, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had to think first before you completed whatever the tasks were. I think we've moved to a do before I think, or do before I assess and evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
I try to look for silver linings in
Sure.
all issues. And I think this is one of those: slow down,
Mm-hmm.
take a breath, think, reflect. You know, do you really have to start your college search as a ninth grader right now? Or as a 10th grader right now? Are there some other things you could maybe do in your community? And
Mm-hmm.
that community might be the immediate people you're living with,
Mm-hmm.
or your neighbors that you haven't met or talked to, because you're so busy doing, 50 bazillion other things.
Right.
Now is a time to kind of step back and reflect and go out and do the gardening, right? That hasn't been done in 20 years. Go out and, offer some guidance or assistance to someone else that maybe could use that benefit right now. Maybe we're going to step back a little bit from this and say, you know what, all those things that we kept adding on, whether they were clubs, organizations, activities, higher level courses, whatever that is. I think
Mm-hmm.
we've just sort of given, we've been, I won't say we've given, we've been almost mandated
Mm-hmm.
to stay in our homes,
Mm-hmm.
right? We did a jigsaw puzzle the other night. Do
Oh
you know
yeah.
how long? You know how long it's been since I've done a jigsaw puzzle? I mean, so we're doing some things in different, family time. We're doing some things that, when our schedules were competing, where it was literally, we're eating dinner together. I'm cooking dinner. First of all, that's in and of itself well, don't ask anybody in my house if that's a joy or not. But I'm cooking
Okay.
dinner. I'm
I'm sure.
cooking dinner, and we're sitting down. We're four of us, four out of
Yeah.
five. One has a job down in D.C., so he's in his own quarantined area. Um, but 4 out of 5 of us are sitting down at night having dinner, talking about things that happening in the world, talking about what went on that day, sharing some funny tidbit. And most of us are confined to the house, at this point. So looking for opportunities to find value in little things, as opposed to big things, I think is really important. And whether it's, I have 3 males, so saying that to a 17-year-old male might fall maybe on quasi deaf ears, because when you have people that right now should be playing spring baseball,
Mm-hmm.
should be doing some other things, that's a little harder to hear. Um, my colleagues, it's interesting. We all have kids. Most of us have kids. Some have very young kids. And so when we're doing our staff meetings, I just said to them on Wednesday, look, everybody, we're all working at our own pace and in our own space, and we are all professionals, and we're going to get the work done for the good of the college like we always do. But if you have 3 little ones at home and you can't be online from 11:30 to 2:30 because you have to get lunch taken care of and get everyone down for a nap, you're using the best resources you have available. Be a parent.
Yep.
Go do that, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me, I want people to give themselves permission to slow it down, think about what's important to them. I honestly think when we get back to whatever normal is going to look like, you'll probably see people reflecting in different ways about, well, do I really want to continue to do that activity or that, be involved in that organization? Is it the value I want it to have? Does it have the meaning and purpose that I want it to have? So I think we'll have some good reflection out of this.
So become recentered, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very important. Well, this is very helpful, Kathy, and I appreciate your insights. Before we sign off, is there a resource, website, or web page on your site that you would refer families to so that they can kind of understand what Dickinson is up to right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, they can just go to the Dickinson webpage. And then if in the search box, just type in virtual visits.
Mm-hmm.
That page is robust, and we're adding to it all the time. So we're adding some admitted student FAQs, and a lot of that's coming out of when we do those online sessions with admitted students, the kinds of questions they're asking. So we're kind of taking the initiative to have some of our current Dickinson students respond to those questions, and we're posting them then on the FAQ.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think if and that's appropriate whether you're a prospective student, just a sophomore, junior getting started, or that admitted student, and even our enrolled students. There's some good information. And I think every college website, I've been kind of looking at some of our peer and competitor websites every weekend just to see if there's anything they're posting. I think everybody has really good COVID-19 information up about what's happening in their own space and the needs, and some are including things they're doing in their own communities. So I would just refer people to take a look at that, because sometimes in reading things that don't seem relevant to a campus visit, you learn a lot about a community and what they're saying about themselves or what a president's saying. And I just find those to be really valuable and helpful.
That's great advice. Great advice. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank you for joining us and for sharing your good thoughts about the world of college admission in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And I know you're doing a great job there, and I wish you the very best as the class of 2024 comes back to your campus in the fall. And for those of you who've joined us for this session, thank you. And until the next time, be safe and have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Peter. Take care.